So good afternoon, everybody. I am, what do we decide, Rick? Am I pinch hitting or am I designated hitter? I'm standing in for Andy Rich, who regrets not being able to be here and would have loved to be here. This is, I think, the 6th iteration of the Conversations and Leadership series, the Colin Powell School. I want to tell you just a little bit about that series and the generous couple that have made it possible. Ever since we started the Colin Powell Center, bringing people who have had successful careers with a significant leadership component in it, bringing them to campus, have them talk about their lives, talk about how they got to where they are, has been a really important element of our programming at the college. It's important, I think, for our students to see that the gap between themselves and people in the field that sometimes seems cavernous maybe isn't so cavernous if you can track the trails some people have traveled to get to where they are. General Powell used to do us the tremendous favor of talking about his hardship as a student, his insecurities as a student, and he did it because it was true and he thought it was funny at some level. But at another level, it was really important to him that students understood that there was never a moment in his life as a person who is the age of a City College student when a kind of light shone on him that said, you will be Secretary of State, and it's all preordained. That the insecurities or the questions you have about what the future holds for you were his insecurities and fears as well. And he would say that, and then he would emphasize that you are as well positioned, as well prepared, as well supported as he or his generation were at City College. And that means leadership is within your grasp. And so that's a really important kind of theme to attach to this program. And it's a theme that I think has captured the imagination of Rick and Susan Goings, who have supported this series from its beginning, conceptualized it in the wake of General Powell's passing. They did not come to campus. They didn't have the opportunity to come to City College when General Powell was around and able to show him his alma mater. But from early on, we're supporting students and work at the Colin Powell Center and then the school, and we've been deeply, deeply grateful for that. But in the wake of General Powell's passing, they came and had a series of conversations with Andy and some other folks at the school to really talk about what they could do to memorialize their friendship with General Powell, but also to extend the work that they've both been doing in their own capacity. Both have had executive leadership, national leadership positions in the Boys and Girls Clubs. Together they founded the World Fund or Foundation for Youth Clubs. There's an F. Fund or World Youth Clubs, right, which knits together youth organizations, not just in the United States, but around the world. And so there's an absolute direct and bright line between the work that they've done in their other substantial, vast philanthropy and the work that they brought to City College. And so before we do anything else, please thank the Goings for the support they've given to this series. You will have an opportunity to see more of Susan very shortly, because when we learned that she wasn't just supporting this program, but had a deep and rich history as an on-camera journalist in California and other places, in Florida as well, we implored her that she be the interlocutor in these conversations. And they have been wonderful conversations. Some of you have heard Gayle King and Condoleezza Rice and artists and actors. And today we have a wonderful new addition to that, Mr. Beau Bridges, who you will in a second hear more about. But we're thrilled to have you here, Mr. Bridges. By way of a preliminary introduction, before I say anything else, and I won't say very much else, we have a film that was made in Mr. Bridges' honor when he very recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award. And so we'd like to show you that, to give you a clear sense of who you will be speaking with and listening to. And then we will bring our two interlocutors to the stage. Can we roll the film? Thanks. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call a sizzle reel. We are thrilled to have Mr. Beau Bridges with us tonight. The one thing that you won't see on that reel is something I saw last night when I was flipping around. Some of you may know that there is a reboot of the series Matlock, and about halfway through the first episode, there he is, one of 3 characters that may have committed a dastardly deed, and nobody knows who, not even him. Please welcome to the stage Susan Goins and Mr. Beau Bridges.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. And Beau, thank you for flying across the country to join us from Los Angeles. And as Vince said, we've had a lot of really interesting people joining us for this Conversation and Leadership series. And you are our first actor, but I don't want you to feel any pressure to be really entertaining.
Well, I don't. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a first for me as well, because I've never had such a dear friend interview me. I've known this lady for 40 years, almost as long as I've known my wife. So she's promised me that she's not going to ask me any really dangerous questions. She knows all my secrets. So.
I had my fingers crossed.
No, you can ask me anything you like.
Yeah, well, having known Beau for 40 years, I can tell you he's one of the nicest humans you will ever meet. And I was thinking about that yesterday with your family, and you come from a long acting family. Both your parents were actors, your brother's an actor. But I have never in 40 years, and I sincerely mean this, have never heard anybody in your family speak ill of another. I mean, it's always positive. No matter what, it's always, I mean, and our families have been through a lot of difficult times over the years, but we always try to put a positive emphasis on it. So anyway, you come from great parents, but I really thank you for being here. As I was looking at the students when we were sitting over here, I was thinking many of them, maybe a lot of you know where you're going, what you want to do, why you're here at this school, and what your career will be. But I bet there's a lot of you that have no idea, or you think you know, but you're going to change your mind along the way. And as the mother of several boys, I can tell you that's what I've observed, is that their lives over the years and what they thought might be their careers have changed. Did you always know that you wanted to be an actor? Or when you were their age, what did you think you were going to be?
Well, my dad was an actor, Lloyd Bridges, and he always seemed to enjoy his job, what he was doing. So I thought about it, but I loved athletics when I was a kid, sports, and I thought kind of that's where I was heading. And then by the time I got to college, I played at a really elite college. I'll talk about them later, under John Wooden at UCLA. And my jump shot from the corner started to fade. And so I decided that was probably not a perfect spot for me in terms of my profession. I thought, although I did think about coaching or teaching was interesting. But I thought, well, you know, let me see what this acting stuff is like, and I tried my hand at it. I'd done a little bit, as you saw in that thing, when I was younger, and got a kick out of it. But you know, probably around my freshman year in college, I started to work a little bit, and you know, it's a tough business. My dad was very honest with me. He said, you know, I might be able to help you a little bit in the beginning, and I can teach you everything I know. But in the end, you've got to work hard, you've got to prepare hard, because only one person gets the job, and it's kind of a heartbreaking business. Not many people have a sustaining career. And you know, so I took him at his word, and I worked hard on it. I felt really blessed to have a father to help me get that first job. Being an actor is, it's hard to get that first job. It's a cruel business. So I was really blessed that my dad could help me get, my brother Jeff and I, and in fact all our family were in his series Sea Hunt that he did. And that's how I got my feet wet in that business. But I love it. I love doing what I'm doing. But I understand how my wife and I have 5 children, and they, you know, especially the younger one, now, you know, they've all kind of struggled with what they're, you know, what are they going to do in the end. And but you know, it's a really exciting time for you guys to be contemplating what's ahead, what you're going to do. One of the things that my coach John Wooden, who is certainly one of 2 great mentors that I had when I was younger, one of the things he said was, failure is never fatal. Failure to change might be, which I think is a good one to think about when you're contemplating what you're going to do, what's going to happen.
That's really true. So you learned about leadership from the famous John Wooden, one of the most famous basketball coaches ever. He was at UCLA. But I know you and Wendy have many times been to the White House. You've seen presidents come and go. You've attended a lot of functions there. You've seen leadership in action. What do you think are the characteristics of a good leader?
Well, you know, like I mentioned, my coach, John Wooden, who was great. We'll talk about him a little more, hopefully. And then my dad was a great mentor to me. But now, for the last 40 years, my main mentor and the leader that I follow is sitting right over there, my wife, Wendy. She, you know, she leads with joy and compassion. And I think her drive is to provide a safe and peaceful path for her family, and there's no ego there, which I think is important for a great leader. She has, you know, it's more about what she can do for her family and for others, and so I've always kind of taken that to heart.
But I love that, because it's not only leadership. I mentioned presidents and a famous basketball coach, and you mentioned Wendy, and it's about family and the leadership that she has within that. Your mom had that. Your mom was very much, in fact, I see a lot of the way Wendy is with your family is the way your mom was when I, you know, knew her. You know.
Yeah, and I think she leads by example, which is another important thing that a great leader must have. My father was a great leader. The word we heard all the time from him was respect. Respect for yourself, respect for your fellow man, respect for your planet. And also, like I mentioned, he was really all about preparation. And he was a humble guy too, and he was a team player, which Coach Wooden talked a lot about. I remember one great thing that happened with my dad that I heard about was he was doing the lead in a movie, and he was in almost every scene, and he was out there working, and the director kind of badmouthed this young guy that was working as a production assistant, you know, just come on, probably one of his first jobs, probably about the same age as some of you guys. And the director badmouthed him in front of the whole crew. And I will call the director John, I can't remember what his name was, but my dad said, John, I'd like you to apologize to Mark, you know, you just, you know, read him out in front of the whole crew. I didn't like that. And the director kind of looked at my dad, kind of shocked. And my dad said, okay, I'll be in my trailer, and you let me know when you've apologized to him in front of the crew, and then I'll come back and go to work, which I thought was really cool, because that's what was important to my dad, was the team and how you accomplish things together. He was a great leader that way. And then John Wooden, you know, the guy won almost 10 straight national championships in a row in basketball at UCLA. I just played my freshman year, and I sat on the bench most of the time because I was in there with some pretty heavy hitters. And but then he lived to 99, and he stayed in touch with all his players, even the guys that sat on the bench. What was most important to him was that we all would try to become good citizens. That's what he cared about. And so I saw him all through my lifetime. He always sat at the same table at this little joint called VIPs down on Ventura Boulevard. And I'd bring my kids in to meet him just like all his other players did. And then I ended up voicing a lot of his books that he wrote. He wrote one on leadership, actually. And so I stayed in touch with him all his life. And he was great. He had all these little sayings, you know, make every day your masterpiece was one of them. And he was really into basics. You know, like I remember when I first met him, we were all lined up on the gym floor, sitting there, you know, backs against the wall, waiting for coach to come in. We'd never met him. And I'm a little nervous. I'm looking over, seeing all these high school All-Americans, and I was just a walk-on. You know, I just barely made the team. And he comes in, and he says, the first words out of his mouth is, "Gentlemen, we will begin by learning how to tie our shoes." And we all thought, what? You know, no one said anything. And it's because he said, first, you pull up your socks all the way. He says, because in the middle of a game, if you got a wrinkle in your sock, he says, it's going to feel like a nail there toward the end of the game. So you got to make sure that you pull that sock up. He says, then you start with the laces way at the bottom and come up and always finish with a double knot, because you don't want your shoelaces to come untied when there's 2 minutes to go at the end of a game. And he was like that the whole time. And then later on, ESPN did a documentary on him, on Coach, and he had a lot of his players from the past come on, a lot of the great ones like Kareem and all these guys. And I was surprised that they asked me to come on. I said, you want me to come on? Said, yeah. So I told this story that I just told you about the shoes. And then when I saw the version of the doc all cut together, what they did is all the players that were interviewed individually shared the same story.
Oh, that's great.
And they intercut the whole story with all these different guys talking. You know, it was fun.
What is the name of the triangle?
Oh yeah, his greatest contribution, I think, to the world really, was his pyramid of success, which I really urge any of you that don't know about it to Google it and check it out. He wrote it as an English teacher, actually, before he became a coach. I've coached all my kids' teams growing up, and I've handed it out to any young person that I meet. And what it is, it's called the pyramid of success. And to coach, success had nothing to do with winning. It had to do with finding peace of mind. And what was peace of mind to coach? It was leaving the task knowing that you've done your very best, because then you can't lose. And it's all these blocks, characteristics that you need to find your success. The two cornerstones, industriousness and enthusiasm, hard work and joy. Because Coach said anybody can bring hard work to the task, but when you bring it in combination with joy, that's when special things happen.
What's funny is as you're talking, I realize you use those same ideals coaching our sons in soccer.
Yeah, I passed out the pyramid to those guys, yeah. And then at the very top of the pyramid is competitive greatness as the final block, which means when it's game time or whatever your task is in the job that you choose, when it's game time, the pyramid is divided in half, faith and patience. faith in yourself, faith in whatever spiritual belief you have, and then patience because it never happens the way you think it's going to happen or in the time you think it's going to happen. You got to be patient. Yeah, he was great. And he had that same team sensitivity too. I remember we had a guy on our team, we would go off on the freshman team, we'd go and watch the varsity workout sometimes, and was watching them, and the guy that was the leading goal scorer on the varsity team, you know, had a major, what do you call it, a contract,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, to pay for his
Scholarship.
yeah.
Thank you.
Had a
President.
major scholarship there. And in a scrimmage of the game, he got mad at one of the guys he was opposing, and the kid was like a walk-on, you know, not a big deal. And Ron, this guy, you know, he threw the basketball, hit this other kid in the chest. And coach, 2 seconds went by, and he said in a very quiet voice, he never yelled, he said, "Ron, go pack up your locker, you're through here at UCLA." and all the guys on the team are looking at each other and saying, "That's our best player, what are you doing?" But then he later told him, he said, "No, you know, there's nobody on this team that's more important than somebody else, that you don't, you know, you don't disrespect your team member. That can't happen here." And I think that was the first year that they won their first national championship.
And that helped strengthen them,
Yeah,
him doing that.
absolutely.
But I saw you with your son Dylan is a great athlete, came from a family of athletes. Our son Chris did not come from a family of athletes. They were musicians and journalists, and he really, I remember one time he wanted to be a goalie on the soccer team. So this is 35 years ago. We're talking 5-year-olds. And so Beau very kindly lets him be goalie, and he wasn't the best goalie, but you identified something in him. I mean, as a leader, you looked and you said, I know what he'll be good at. And that really changed his life, and he went on to be a good athlete.
Yeah, he was a really quick young kid. He didn't know too much about soccer, which I didn't really know that much about it, to tell you the truth. But he was fast, and I said, "Look, I know these other kids on these other teams." I said, "I'll tell you who the best player is on that other team, and you just follow that kid around and deny him the ball. He's going to be in the midst of everything, every play." And he made a kid cry one time because he couldn't get the ball.
But so your son Casey was also one of the soccer coaches. And Casey is how old now?
54?
54?
Is that right? Yeah.
Okay, so 54 years ago you adopted Casey.
Right.
And Casey is black. And watching the clips in that film, I mean, do you look back now? I mean, did you ever encounter any of the same issues, especially the one from Blackish, where you're talking to your daughter?
Yeah, that was really weird to have that scene. And he's, you know, half black and half white is his racial makeup. And at the time, you know, that many years ago, it was pretty unique. I remember I was doing a film at that time with Sidney Poitier, who was someone I really respected, an actor. And when I adopted my son, Casey, at that time, you know, there were a lot of really crazy kind of letters and things coming my way, some death threats and stuff. And there was a lot of media attention on this, and I told Sidney about it. I said, "What should I do? You know, I don't want to, you know, be talking to all these news media." He says, "Do Ebony and Life, and tell them all the rest of them to go away." And that's what I ended up doing. But yeah, he's my oldest, and he's you know, he is the mentor for all of our kids. I mean, they're all really tight and close, and he's now a soccer coach himself. It's one of the things he does, and a documentary filmmaker.
But he was also significant in helping us start World Youth Clubs.
Oh, yeah.
And establishing the first club in Soweto in South Africa, which you were involved in as well.
Yeah. World Youth Clubs is a great organization. It's quite new. It's just 4 or 5 years old now. And Rick and Susan were over at our house for dinner, and my son was there. And Rick, who had vast experience with Boys and Girls Club, being the president of that organization, was interested in establishing youth centers all around the world. And he asked Casey, my son, if he'd be interested in going to Africa to see about starting something there. And so Case went to Johannesburg and established a youth club in Soweto, which at the time was, and this is before the World Youth Clubs was totally organized.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
And they had an NBA, came and built a basketball court right in the middle of Soweto, which was quite a feat. And now, how many clubs do we have in Africa?
I don't even know.
20 or
20
something?
something in Africa, yeah.
We have
9 in South Africa, and
Yeah.
I think 20 across the continent.
Yeah, we have affiliate clubs all over the world. I think there's, how many countries?
We're in 48 countries, I think, now.
48 countries, and
Because we just added 2 this week, so we were 46. I think we're 48.
yeah, and how many kids do we serve?
We serve almost 5,000 kids, 500,000 kids, and 5,000 clubs.
500,000 kids,
Yeah.
and, providing support and a safe place for them to gather and educate and have fun and do their thing safely.
Yeah, and a lot of the kids that we serve in World Youth Clubs face challenges all the time. And I'm thinking about young people in general and the rejection that you get just in life and the challenges that you face. And in acting, it's like you chose a job where you know you're going to be rejected, I presume, right? I mean, how do you handle that? And what advice can you give to people when they face those challenges and face rejection?
Yeah, well, again, my basketball coach said, failure is, that's how you learn, really. And if you don't fail, you're probably not raising your bar high enough. You gotta be out there and competing to figure out, where you want to be. And that's easier said than done, I know it. And I've failed so many times in my profession and continue to. And every time I get out there, even though I've been doing it, I'm 82 years old and I've been doing it a long time, I get nervous every time I get out there. And, you just want to be your best. But I think that's okay because that's what kind of fires you up when you get out there to do your thing, whatever that may be.
But growing up in a family of actors, I also know how important family is to you in general. And how do you balance the two between, because you have to travel a lot, you're on location a lot. I mean, you've done film, you've done television, you've done Broadway. How do you handle that? How do you balance family and the career path that you've chosen?
Well, in the beginning, our children would travel with us before they were in school, especially the younger ones. And then when they started in school, Wendy had to, stay home and keep the home fires burning. And I would try to get back as much as I could. What I missed the most is if I missed a game, a soccer game or a basketball game. That would kill me. I'd make her take movies of it and stuff. And you can balance it, but it takes, I think 2 people doing it is better than 1, that's for sure.
But people are blessed if they are brought up in a family with 2 parents, especially nowadays.
Yes.
A lot of kids
But you
don't
can
have
also
that.
do it. A single parent, you can do it.
But it is, I was a single parent for 5 years after my first husband passed away. And it's hard, but you figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I respect people that can pull that off.
So you've worked with many different notable other actors, directors, producers. Is there any person that really stands out who was more meaningful to you, or more of a meaningful experience, something that was really special that you got the opportunity to be involved with?
Yeah, well, my dad told me when I went out to work on my first job on my own, and he said, you know, I want you to realize that you're joining a family now that is much bigger than the family that you have with us. He said, they're going to have your back, and you're going to see how close you're going to be with everybody. And I didn't really know what he was talking about, but when it first really occurred to me was I was in my 20s doing a movie called The Landlord, which we filmed in New York. And I was the only actor from California coming out. And in the movie, I'm playing this guy, Elgar Enders, who buys a walk-up apartment in Park Slope, which at the time was definitely a underserved community. It's now experienced gentrification and expensive property, but not at that time. It was sort of in the same situation as Harlem was at that time. And so I'm going there to work on this, and a movie had been shot in Harlem maybe a month before ours, Cotton Comes to Harlem. And this was in the, when was it, 69? 69, and all the major cities in America just about were on fire over the whole racial issue of what was going on. And here was this movie I'm doing about this rich white kid who buys this apartment, and the first thing I do is I kick out all the attendants living in the apartment, you know, take it over myself. So it was all kind of about that kind of stuff. So I get there, my first day's work, I'm pulling in front of the apartment. This is the story now. And I'm all dressed in a white suit, and I got a potted plant in my arm. And all these New York actors are sitting in the stoop watching me pull in, and I mistakenly hit a car. And they all go, ugh, you know. Now, I'd never met these actors. I didn't know any of them. We were just starting the first day. And all the actual neighbors in the neighborhood were, it was a hot summer day, and they were all standing on the rooftop, you know. And I'm thinking, oh, this is, you know, what's going to happen here? And in the scene, these guys, well, when, you know, with the movie that I told you about before, Cotton Comes to Harlem, they had a lot of police presentation there. And our director, Hal Ashby, who went on to make a bunch of really great movies, he said, I don't want any cops on my movie. He said, you introduced me to the baddest cat in the neighborhood. That's all I want. So this guy introduced himself as number one, and Hal gave him a part in the movie. And he's one of the guys sitting on this stoop with these other actors from New York. And the scene starts off, number one jumps up and throws a karate kick in my face, and I just take off running about 3 or 4 blocks away from the camera. It's on a long lens. And as I'm running and these guys are chasing me, the actors, the people on the rooftops are yelling, get that white motherfucker, you know, and I'm thinking, oh shit, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna take a bullet here, you know, I'm gonna die. And I get down at the end of the thing, and the scene is over. Now I have to walk back all these 3 blocks, and I'm kind of shaking in my boots, and I'm walking, and suddenly I feel this big arm come around me. He says, hey, I hear you played a little ball in college, huh? Well, you know, how do you like the, you know, who do you like in the NBA? You know, who's your team? And I'm thinking, what is this? You know, I don't know this guy. What's he doing? And then I realize he's looking up, you know, the people on the rooftop, and he's an actor. One of the guys was chasing me, and he's basically saying to the people up there, if you want to shoot him, you're going to have to pull a bullet through me. And it was Lou Gossett, a wonderful actor who we just lost not long ago. And he became a lifelong friend of mine, you know.
I interviewed him the night he won an Academy Award for An Officer and a Gentleman.
Right,
And
yeah.
just a fine man, fine man. So how do you prepare for a particularly emotional or intense scene? Is that difficult?
Well, I was trained by my dad. He was my main teacher. And he gave me a book in the very beginning called Acting, the First 6 Lessons, which was written by Richard Boleslavsky in 1939. Boleslavsky was Polish and a student of Konstantin Stanislavski, who wrote the book that lays out what's known as the method, Stanislavski method, which really changed how actors go about the business in many ways. And so I followed that, and a lot of that is about emotional recall, you know, thinking about, you know, when you had, like, if you got to kill a person, you know, you've never done that in your life, but have you ever killed an animal or done something like that, you know?
So to think about that.
Yeah, you got to think about that. But, you know, in the end, now that I've done it as long as I have, there are so many different paths to people choose to be actors. You know, there's a lot of different ways to prepare. And I kind of take things as I go from different people. I mean, I think that, you know, that's fine. I think you should be open to other people's experiences. I think communication is so important. That's another thing that a good leader needs. You have to be open to communication, to talking and checking in with people. I think that's, I was in the military, and that I realized how important that was.
Especially just being a good communicator in general. The more practice you can have, I think helps with your presentations at school. I mean, a literal thing is maybe when you have a presentation, film yourself on your phone. You record yourself without the film and listen to how you sound without watching yourself, and then, you know, do it in a mirror.
Yeah, and sometimes I find Wendy and I talk about it, our kids or our grandchildren. We have 6 grandchildren now. You know, we put a call out to them, and then they don't get back to us, you know. And you kind of, you worry about them, but you also expect them to get back to you, you know. And I learned that in the military, you know, because could be a matter of life and death in the military. If you don't get a response, you have to do that. And I think one of the things that bothers me the most when young people in my family don't get back to me, it's not so much because I know they love me, and I think, well, they're busy, whatever's going on, but I don't want them to get burned later in life when they're at work and doing a job. And, you know, like in my business, if I get a call and telling me when I have to show up, if I don't respond immediately, in 10 minutes I'll get a call. Did you get the call? You know, because professionally, any business, you've got to communicate, you got to respond.
So I asked you how you managed an emotional scene. How does your wife manage it when you have a romantic scene to do with somebody?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember the first time when I brought her to the set, was it with Bonnie Bedelia? There's a movie called Heart Like a Wheel. And the young lady that was playing my love interest, Bonnie Bedelia, was an old friend of mine that I'd known for you know, years before. In fact, my wife thinks that I fooled around with her, which I didn't. But she's a great friend, still is. And so we had this scene in bed. And I told the assistant director, I said, you know, my wife is coming. Oh, yeah, that's right. You were just my girlfriend at that time. I said, my girlfriend is coming to the set today. You know, I wonder if she should. I asked Bonnie, you know, because she's my scene partner. I said, I don't know if I should let Wendy, you know, in to watch this scene. I don't know how you feel about it, if you feel uncomfortable.
Were you going to be in bed?
Huh? Yeah, we're two of us in bed together.
Okay.
And Bonnie says, "Oh yeah, bring her in," you know. So Wendy comes in and Bonnie sits her right down at the bottom of the bed. It was pretty crazy. No, love scenes are sometimes the hardest thing to do because you have to, you know, break it down and choreograph it because you're dealing with lights and camera moves and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like when you have a fight in the movies, you know, that's choreographed too. Mm-hmm. And but love scenes, they're tough. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. We both have several musician and actor friends, and I've noticed a distinct difference in the way different people, well, for instance, my late husband Jeff was a musician. He had a band called Toto, but he was also a session musician. So he might do a session with, and he was a really good friend of Beau's, and he might do a session with Madonna or Bruce Springsteen or Michael Jackson, and then go do something for free for an up-and-coming musician just because he loved to play, and he loved his craft. And I think of other musicians that would never have done that. And you, I mean, you work constantly. You have worked, at least for the last 40 years, almost nonstop is what it seems like to me. I mean, rarely taking a break, unless you and Wendy and the family head off to either visit us in Virginia or go to your home in Hawaii and relax. And what is it that makes you, is it just because you love acting?
Well, you know, one of the things my father told me in the beginning, he says, you know, don't wait around for that phone call, you know, where someone offers you a job. And he said, when you don't have a project going, you still should be working toward what you want to do and be prepared. And, you know, I guess, you know, most jobs you can find a way to do that. I know acting is maybe a little easier because you can get out on anywhere and put on a scene. I mean, no one's, you know, you got to be careful that the police don't arrest you, depending on what you're doing. But we used to call it street theater back in the day. And when I was younger, I would go out and perform on the back of flatbed trucks. Performed in prisons and hospitals, and I would just do my own thing. I'd just create a scene. And I remember...
Wait, to promote yourself, to try to get work?
No, just to practice my craft, you know, and to get in front of an audience. And I remember when Jeff was like 16, I would bring him along, and we'd go into, like one time we went into a market parking lot, and our dad taught us how to fight, street fight, but also fighting for the film, for movies. So we enjoyed doing that kind of thing. And what we do, we go in there and fight each other, put on a fight until a crowd came around. And then when the crowd came around, we'd jump up on the back of the truck and perform, you know, a scene from Come Blow Your Horn or some movie. And I had a funky little mic on the back of the thing. In fact, when Jeff did The Fabulous Baker Boys, which was a wonderful script, and they wanted him, Jeff was really peaking in his career at that time. He'd had a couple of Academy Award nominations, and my career was kind of dipping a little bit. You know, that careers go up and down. You know, you have to just kind of hang in there.
Like life.
Like life. And they wanted an actor who was kind of more peaking to play his brother. And Jeff said, nah, he says, I want my brother to play my brother, you know. Would you at least meet him? To the young director, Steve Klopas. He was only 23 when he wrote that movie. And so I said, Jeff, you really want to do that? He says, yeah, go and meet Klopas, you know, see what happens. So I went in to have lunch with Steve Klopas, and I took this little Polaroid picture, which I still have, of Jeff and I on the back of this truck. And I showed that to Steve, and this whole movie, the story was about these two brothers performing together, and I think that helped me get the job.
That's great. This is a kind of a weird question. I had no intention of asking, but as you're talking, I was reminded when Rick was chairman and CEO of Tupperware, he asked me to interview a very well-known actress who had been a child actor, who shall go unnamed, and for a big Tupperware event that they were doing. And so it would be live, just like this, sitting like this. And she had a request. She wanted a teleprompter, and she wanted the questions I was going to ask her to be put on the teleprompter, but she also wanted her answers on the teleprompter. Just like that. Right? And did you ever have any, or maybe now currently, do you have any weird requests or things that you want to have on a set or that they need to do for you? Are you high maintenance, Beau?
No, the one thing I do is I bring this chair with me, which I brought for probably the last 30 years or so. It's a fold-out zero gravity chair. You know what those things are like? And yeah, I bring that. I find a dark little place where I can get away from everything, and I just lay in that chair, and I say, you know where to find me when you want me. And that's really all I do. But I think that we talked about communication before, and I think that has a lot to do too with preparing yourself for whatever job you do. Like you mentioned Rick, and he's not an actor, but he is a very well-rounded, educated guy and a good buddy of mine. And we talk a lot about history. He's really a history buff. And I've used a lot of the stuff that I've learned from just my discussions with my buddy back there that I apply to the work I'm doing. And I also discuss my roles with him. In fact, you mentioned this Matlock series. Rick is CEO of a big company, and I wanted to dress like him. And I came in, and I told the wardrobe person, I was dressed, I had kind of all in black.
Well, you first asked me for photos, send you photos of Rick at work.
Yeah, I said, I want pictures of Rick at work so I can copy the way he looks. And I even showed them to the wardrobe lady. I said, this is how I want to look. This is my buddy who's a CEO. And, you know, he sent me some shirts that he got for me to put on. And I got all dressed, and I thought I looked great and everything. And the head of the showrunner said, no, you look too much like Steve Jobs. I don't think Rick appreciated that. But they said, we want you to look totally different from any of the other, it's a law firm, any of the other lawyers. So they ended up, I'm wearing gingham shirts and looking more actually like the way I look when I dress up at all.
I do want to say something, and I've told you this before, or we've talked about it a couple of times over the last 30 years, but this is how nice of a person this guy is. So when my husband died, we were in our 30s, and our boys were 8 years old, 6 years old, and 7 months old. And the two older ones, Chris and Miles, were getting ready to start elementary school. Miles was going into the first grade, Chris into the third. Along with their daughter was going into the first grade also, and so was their son, Dylan, going into the third grade. And I got a call from Miles's first grade teacher that he would get upset thinking about his dad, because it had literally been a week, and I had been told it would be best to send them to school, keep things as normal as possible. So I sent them to school, and he would start thinking about his dad and get upset, and he would run from the classroom. She tells me that Beau has come to school, and he's sitting in one of those little first grade desks next to Miles, and when Miles would run out the room, Beau would go after him, talk to him, calm him down, and get him to come back in the classroom. And he did that for several days until Miles was more comfortable. But that's how nice he is. And literally, Wendy, the whole family is exactly like that. They're just wonderful people, and we feel blessed to be such good friends with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know how we're doing on time.
We've got time for about 10, 15 minutes of questions.
Okay. The one thing I want to say, though, before we go to questions, I looked up in the Guinness Book of World Records the actor who has been working professionally for the longest time, and it's a guy named Kurt Bois, B-O-I-S, who's a German actor, and he worked for 79 years. Now, your first appearance in a film was with John Barrymore, right? As a child?
John Garfield.
John Garfield, okay.
Yeah, I was carried through a scene. I didn't have any lines. In fact, I think I probably whined a little bit.
Couldn't
as a
talk?
kid.
Oh,
Yeah, I was a little baby.
So
yeah.
you may be able to beat this guy in the Guinness Book of World Records. We're going to look into that.
Okay.
Because that would be, and if not, even if it goes from the first one, the scene where you, at the very first scene in that film where he's a little boy walking, if not, then in 2 years you will beat his record.
That's right.
Yeah. So, all right. Anyway, let's open it up for questions. Anybody have a question for Beau? Right back here.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges, for being here.
Thank you for wearing your UCLA Bruin.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That was for you. And for spending a few minutes with me and sharing my appreciation for Coach Wooden as well and my experiences and time with him. I think I did some research. Is it correct you did a one-man show as Coach Wooden? And that's part one of the question. Part two is, if you did, is it out there in the universe for someone to see? Because I would love to see it.
Ooh, good
Oh,
question.
thanks. Yeah, no, I did. There's a wonderful script written, a one-man show about Coach, and I did portray him, and it was exciting. I got to, it was up in, where was it? Aspen, Colorado, where we did it, and most of Coach's family were there too, which was great. Yeah, that was great. I love portraying actual people that live. It's always a blessing, especially that man.
But isn't that more of a challenge because people can compare you to the actual person as opposed to a fictional character?
Yeah, and you also want to, you want to pay homage to that person, especially if they're a good person,
Really put on a good performance.
Yeah.
Another question?
Thank you both for this wonderful conversation. I just want to know, obviously you saw that your father helped you when you first got in the industry and you're working since you were a child, but he said that you had to put in the work. How savvy were you at a young age as far as navigating the business aspect of the industry? And also, what do you think it's going now? I know there was the actors' protest a little while ago. How do you think that's, what do you think about that right now?
Yeah, I think the physical part is an important part of the preparation. I did here in New York about 10, 11 years ago, a Broadway musical, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And man, I'm telling you, that really pushed me physically because I'd never danced and sung in front of an audience like that. I was so nervous, and I prepared a lot. I prepared hard, just my body physically, because that was one of the things that struck me about that opportunity is when I got in there with those Broadway dancers. I mean, those people are incredible athletes. I mean, jumping and leaping and really tough stuff. And yeah, so the physical part is important, and also just maintaining your state of mind, and trying to be relaxed when you can relax, which is another important lesson for people that are competing in athletics, knowing when to kick back, when to take your time, and also when to give your most physically. Yeah, I remember that.
Another question? The young man in the back row.
Thank you, honey. We're married, so I can call her that. Beau, something I've always, we've known each other a long time, but I've never asked you this question. But for all of you that are graduating, one of the things so many people want is to have some security in life and know what am I going to do for the rest of my life that I love and I can pay for. I've never asked you this, and all those times we've sat and talked, it's a horrible field if you really understand all you do is have temporary jobs, or as you would call it, projects. And that you finish one project, it's like being on a trapeze, and you want to swing to the next, and there's no friggin' trapeze there to go to. How have you managed that? And I know having Wendy, really, their 40 years has been, how have you managed that insecurity of having all of these temporary jobs all your life?
Yeah, I've thought about it in terms of my profession. It's a lot of little births and deaths, you know. You come to the job, the project, all excited. You're going to meet a whole new group of people, and like the first day of school or first day in a new class, and it's exciting. And then you get in there, you do the work. It always goes so much faster than you think it's going to, just like life. And then it's over. And then it's a bit melancholy because in my job we share a lot of really important personal things with each other. But I think many jobs are that's the same way. And then it's over, and you think, well, maybe I'm not going to see these people again, and so you're kind of sad. But then you never know too, because you might see the person again. So there's that. I remember the book that I really made an impression on me when I first read it, and it still does. There's a book by Alan Watts, Watts. The book is The Wisdom of Insecurity. And really, it's a great book, and it kind of, he was one of the first guys, Mr. Watts, that broke down the whole Zen thing for the Western world so we could understand it. And, his idea in the book is that, all our life, from our parents and from people that are in positions superiority over us, are telling us how important it is to find security in a job, security in relationships, and all of that. He says, and how unfortunate that you can never count on anything in your life except that things are going to change. So, maybe the most important thing is to jump into the sea of change and get comfortable with it, float down the river and go with the rhythm of life, and, keep doing your thing and making your contribution, but always, always be open to change, because that's the nature of life, really.
I think that's an important lesson also, considering that in a week and a half we have a presidential election that is challenging for a lot of people, no matter which side of the aisle you're on, to deal with, and it's got to be unnerving for a lot of people. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, well, the one thing that was occurring to me about change, that's certainly coming, is that first thing that I mentioned, the quote from my coach, which is, excuse me, failure is never fatal. Failure to change might be. So the importance of accepting change. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I don't know what I'm going to do if this one person gets president, becomes the president, but I can't let that, take over my life and my concerns. I just got to, put my faith in the human family, and we'll get past it if that happens. Because this is a crazy time. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a time in my experience where we've been so divided, certainly as a country. And I just want us to come together, no matter who
I think that's the one thing everybody agrees on, is how divided we are.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, how sad is that? Any other questions? One more.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming. We were talking about leadership, and you mentioned Hal Ashby, who's a hero of mine. I wonder if you could talk about any other directors or people that were particularly great leaders, or artists or so forth that you've worked with.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Hal is certainly one of them. I've had some great directors, and what Hal, he made the whole experience. It was like a party every day coming to work, and I think to be a good leader, one of the things you need to do is to establish a work environment for your team that is filled with joy and fun, and make it a good place to come to, that you look forward to. And that's not as easy as it may seem. And Hal always had music going. He had who is the older woman? Pearl. Yeah, Pearl Bailey was in the movie, and Pearl, would cook us ham hocks and stuff, and grits and everything on the set. It was just like a family and fun. And I would say that some of the directors I've worked with that I really respected, a guy like Steven Soderbergh, who I did 2 movies with, hardly would say a word to the actors about what he wanted from you. It was all about empowering his team to give their best. And to the point with him where we go on, we come to the location, we're going to do a scene, and I had directors tell me where to stand and what to do, and I thought that's what was going to happen. And I came in there, I said, well, this is a dinner scene, there's a lot of tables in the restaurant. I said, where would you like us to be, Stephen? And he says, well, wherever you want, you guys decide. It was me and this other actress, and we got there, sat down at a table, and then I'm waiting for him to begin the rehearsal, to rehearse the scene. Nothing from him. He was a cameraman before he became a director, and he's sitting on the camera, waiting for us to start. And finally he said, go ahead. So we start saying the lines, and now he's roaming around looking at it. But he was like a fly on the wall. And then when you see his movies, that's kind of what it is. It's like you're a fly on the wall, and he, no lights, nothing, all available light. He lit some scenes on a matchstick. All the directors, they have different ways to do it. Other guys will, map out the whole thing on a gym floor and have you go through, all the scenes, and but it's different paths for different folks.
Okay. Vince, if we can do one more. Somebody has their hand raised there, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, how are you? My name is Justin Ramdale, and my question for you is, how do you deal with, excuse me, let me rephrase that. How do you put yourself out there in a way that makes you competitive compared to others where, they have more experience, like, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I go to my old coach at UCLA. John Wooden said, don't worry about what the other team brings, but what they got coming at you, your competition. Just worry about yourself and what you bring. And I think that's a great way to do it, because first of all, you have no control over what they can do. And they're going to be, as good as they're going to be. But you need to have confidence and faith in yourself and what you bring. And also, most jobs you don't do it alone. You have a team with you, a family that you work with, and you do it together. You don't do it alone. So you can also find peace and confidence with that knowledge when you're going up against whatever competition it is.
And keep that in mind as you're doing it, that you're a family, that you're
Yeah,
not alone.
yeah.
Yeah. So, Beau, you had such a remarkable career and are a fine person. What would you like your legacy to be?
Maybe, you mean, I'm not really sure what that word means, but like,
Well, I don't mean don't want you to go now, but
you mean, no, I
long
mean
time
like
from now, what would you like
people
to-
would say about me?
yeah,
or
how would
something?
you like to be remembered?
Just that I've tried to do my best, I think, is what I would, that I tried to be kind.
I'd say you've succeeded. So thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you, Susan. Thank you, guys.
So thank you both. You've given us another fine episode in this series. I want to thank you all for coming. And once more, Mr. Bridges, thank you for your
Thanks for having
thoughts
me. You
and your
guys are a
presence.
Great audience.
Yeah.
Rick and Susan, on behalf of the Colin Powell School and the college, thank you for making these conversations possible and for your talent on stage as well. Thank you both.
pleasure.
Please join me in thanking them.
Well done.